We've been talking about open borders. So if you haven't listened to the last two episodes, I encourage you to go back and listen to those first. But, quote, if you leave the gate open, the cow will wander off. So if you intentionally leave the gate open, you want the cow to wander off, end quote. I just grabbed that off the internet. Like, it's a meme from 2022 that I saw. It does seem that those who advocate for open borders are actively seeking to destroy the fabric of the nation. The destruction of what America stands for, who we are, seems to be by design. The reality is that the nation's fabric is unraveling. Any individual reader may not see this unraveling as being done intentionally with malice. But even if it is just happening by chance, it is happening. Sometimes when I have discussions about these things, people say, it sounds like it's some vast conspiracy and you're a conspiracy theorist. But the reality is, it doesn't matter whether there's some strategic organization of the end toward the end goal. The truth is, it's still happening as different aspects and different entities and different individuals and different parts of our society are seeking their own self-interest or seeking their own benefit or to their own advantage financially, to profit or whatever. It doesn't matter whether or not there's some vast strategic conspiracy toward the same goal, because the unraveling is happening anyway, with or without some networking or conspiracy. So any individual reader may not see this unraveling as being done intentionally with malice, but even if it is just happening by chance, it is still happening. And the border crisis has one of the largest impacts on that unraveling because advocating for and providing for de facto open borders accomplishes 4 key goals. Open borders to our south, not so much to our north, is an attack on Pillar 1, which is language. Those on the other side of the border to our north speak English. That is not true about most people entering the country from the south. While those seeking citizenship must learn English in order to take the exam and fulfill their pledge, those surging across the border to the south, claiming asylum, never returning for their court date, and residing illegally in the United States do not need to learn English. We have accommodated not just Spanish, but in many cases French Creole as well. Press 1 for English or press nuevo por español is very common. Being bilingual is a requirement for many service positions in the southern states at least, and signs and advertisements are displayed in Spanish as well as English in many areas, cities, and regions. How long do you think before we start seeing signs in Arabic or Chinese? We are a multicultural nation, but e pluribus unum, out of many, one. And one way we once pursued that unity was through common language. The French were established on more than half the territory of the country before the English even explored it. Germans who fought as mercenaries for the British Crown in the Revolutionary War decided to stay after their side lost. The Dutch colonized New York. New Sweden encompassed land along the Delaware River, now parts of Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. I am not going to discuss the failures of the country with the Native Americans in this book, but the Cherokee, before the Trail of Tears, voluntarily learned English. Immigrants from Japan and Russia, China, Korea, Thailand, Lithuania, Lebanon, Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, Sudan, Ethiopia, everywhere. I mean, I just listed the countries I know for sure people who came to America and learned English. But everywhere, they became Americans, and they did so primarily by learning the American language. And there is an American language. We know we do not speak true British English. Chips for fries, crisps for chips, boot for the trunk and bonnet for the hood of a car, lift for an elevator, car park for a parking lot, petrol for gasoline, nappy for diaper, and the list goes on and on. No, we have a bastardized American language, which has adapted and changed because of the multicultural nature of the great American experiment. Our history here is not rich or long, we are young. And the first foundational pillar holding up this new civilization, so far from the European continent where our founders' families originated, was, and thus still is, language. De facto open borders, especially as they are in direct contradiction to standing border policy, however, are also an attack on Pillar 2. As mentioned above, they too often bring the attitudes and understandings that led to the lack of freedom in their country into the country where they hope to find freedom. Not only does this unintentionally threaten the pillar of common values, but de facto open borders also undermine American law and order. The very first act performed by an individual gaining undocumented entry into the United States is a criminal one. And the longer they fail to reconcile their presence with the law, the more laws they continue to trespass. And they get away with it. But all this law breaking in one area serves as an example for additional law breaking elsewhere. Why get a driver's license? Why stop for a stop sign? The principle of law and order is overtly bent and broken. And what about the laws that actually seek to protect our rights and liberties? What about those laws then? Not just our safety and security, but all laws are now breakable by precedent. Remember, one of the shared values making up that second pillar that Americans traditionally have is an understanding of natural law and the fact that government needs enough power to protect its citizens and to protect the framework upon which the fabric of this country was built. Equality under the law is part of that foundational fabric, and thus one of the shared values upon which this country was built. Thus, ignoring policy designed to protect the American people and not applying it equally across the board is an overt attack on that second pillar. Because yes, de facto open borders allow enemies of the country to enter it without check. In fact, security issues are the best arguments against open borders as they serve as a highway for drug trafficking, gun trafficking, and human trafficking. Not to mention a means for terrorists to enter the country undetected and set up training camps, such as the ones in Alabama and New Mexico, where they also found children who had been trafficked through the southern border being used as disposable jihadi soldiers. Gun trafficking supports the gangs on the Mexican side of the border, empowering their terror over government officials and regular civilians alike, driving even more migrants across the border while arming gangs and criminals on the U.S. side of the border too, empowering them toward violence, lawlessness, and their war against police, inner city residents, and trapping the new migrants themselves as they seek inclusion and protection. Drug trafficking not only shores up the power of the same gangs and criminals, but feeds the drug trade, which in turn feeds drug addiction, which keeps the vicious cycle of crime, poverty, and violence turning. I think there's something profound in there as well, but I'm not going to get into it. Human trafficking keeps the coyotes paid, incentivizes them to continue to traffic human beings, impoverishes the families of those paying to escape the cartel violence to the south, enslaves those who are trafficked, if not outright killing them, feeds an illicit sex industry, props up pedophilia and prostitution rings, not to mention a new source of unpaid labor, modern day agricultural slavery. All of this trafficking, drugs, guns, human beings, serves to distort values, extinguishes hopes, expectations, and dreams, shifts the priorities of everyone involved, and by de facto enslaving a portion of the population, becomes another greater attack on Pillar 2, shared values and principles, further serving to unravel the fabric of the nation. None of the above mentioned even touches on easy access for terrorists, nor the number of murderers and rapists that must end up being deported only to come back and commit more crime. Nor does it address the fact that many of these asylum seekers simply find themselves enslaved again in a land that promised freedom, or failing actual enslavement, disillusionment that may lead them to lash out against the country that did not fulfill their vision of a better future. It is almost as though this is designed as well, along with capitalizing on the disillusionment of those who manage to arrive.